podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey, it's me, your Uncle Cooper. Sorry to interrupt your music. I do love music, especially when it's set at a reasonable volume. You know, music is really only as good as your speakers. The same is true for minivans. A minivan is only as good as the tires it sits on. And the button on the screen there, it agrees with me. If you click on it, it'll bring you to all the Cooper minivan tires that'll make your minivan a really good minivan. Go with the Coopers! Cooper!
Hello and welcome to the 1865 match report, where it finished Forest 2, Brentford 2. On bonfire night, there were plenty of fireworks going off at the City Ground. VAR, contentious moments, dramatic goals, but overall a share of the spoils for both sides. And we'll be looking at VAR, we'll be looking at penalty decisions and what could have been, perhaps what should have been from Forest's point of view over the course of this match report. And we have the opposition view to come later on. Billy from the Beesotted podcast will be joining us to give his views on today's events. So I'm joined by Baz for this match report. Both of us were at the game this afternoon and I think are still recovering from that 90 minutes of drama that we saw. Before we get into the real meat of it, Baz, first of all, Forest team news for the game. So 3 changes made from the defeat at Arsenal, which saw Emmanuel Dennis come in for Taiwo Awoniyi up front, Nico Williams in for Renan Lodi at left back, which meant we had Aurier at right back and Williams at left back, and Brennan Johnson back in for Jesse Lingard, who was on the bench. So Forest with that back four of Williams, Cook, McKenna and Aurier, Henderson in goal, of course. Midfield with Chet Kouyaté, Remo Freuler, Ryan Yates, and then that front three with Morgan Gibbs-White, Emmanuel Dennis and Brennan Johnson. So what was your take on that team news when you saw those changes made and that side announced?
I think Renan Lodi going out, that was kind of to be expected. As was being said on our previous reports, he doesn't seem to have adapted to English football. Obviously, he's in a difficult place at the moment, but I think he's obviously got a lot of talent and he's obviously must be a good defender because he played for Atletico Madrid, but it's not working for him at the moment and we can't afford to carry him through that. Awoniyi going out for Emmanuel Dennis, I was a little bit surprised at. I think Awoniyi's been doing all right and I quite like him as a player. Lingard for going out for Johnson, I'm not surprised at that. Obviously, Lingard's a bit in the firing line, so yeah, taking him out of the glare of publicity is probably for the best at the minute. And yeah, as a 4-3-3 once more, it was kind of to be expected, really.
And the big team news for Brentford was that Ivan Toney was suspended for this game, which I think most Forest fans were looking at that as a bit of a bonus before kickoff.
Yeah.
I mean, they still managed to score goals and penalties, as we'll come on to, without Toney in the team. But in that first half, Forest came out and took the game to Brentford and played probably as well as I've seen them play so far in the Premier League this season, with a performance. They were on top, moving the ball around nicely and really trying to pin Brentford back. And it was a bright start, I thought, from the Reds to begin with.
Definitely. I think one of the things, there are 2 things that I really liked. First of all, Morgan Gibbs-White, who is obviously incredibly talented, but a lot of the stuff he's tried so far this season, he's done stuff where he's picked out this pass that no one else can see, and then it's not quite come off. Either he's overhit it by half a yard, or whoever he was passing to, normally Brennan Johnson, wasn't expecting it, and so their first touch or whatever was bad. Whereas within, 5 minutes, there were 2 of those passes finding Brennan Johnson and forcing saves out of the keeper. which was really nice to see. It's like that little bit of cohesion and understanding coming together. And then the other thing that's really notable from my point of view, as someone who pays attention to this kind of stuff, is we were probably playing 20 yards higher up the pitch. And I said, although on paper it was a 4-3-3, often when you play a 4-3-3, when you're not in possession, it turns into a 4-5-1. Whereas today, actually, we turned into a 4-2-4. So what was happening was Ryan Yates was pushing right forwards. So we'd have a line of 4 pressing them in their own half. And probably, I can't remember the last time we've done that. I don't think we've done that in this season at all, is press the opponents in their own half. And it was really, really effective. They didn't get any time on the ball. They couldn't control the ball. And then every time we got it, we transitioned really quickly and turned it into an attack, which is not like we've been playing for the rest of the season. It was much more like the Forest of last season.
And one of those attacks provided an early chance for Brennan Johnson. He linked up well with Gibbs-White. The two of them moved the ball nicely between them. Johnson was free in the box from the pass, but the shot was saved by David Raya, and the score stayed 0-0. But on 20 minutes, Forest did make the breakthrough, and it was Gibbs-White with the goal. And I was pleased to see him on the score sheet, because even when we've not been playing well, he's looked like the player who's going to make something happen. And here, Baz, he more than made something happen. This goal was all his.
Well, I'm going to mention this later on as well, but it was Emmanuel Dennis that played the ball through to him down the left. So yeah, Dennis was playing on the left, Johnson on the right with Gibbs-White down the middle, and then Gibbs-White basically juggled the ball and skipped past 3 or 4 of their players before putting the shot in. It was beautiful to watch.
A real moment of skill and quality from him. And yeah, it was. It was just a nice, really nice on the eye kind of goal. And no more than Forest deserved, actually, in that first half. And Forest seemed to, after the goal, they just continued playing in that fashion that they had been. They were on top. Brentford didn't look particularly great. I thought they were struggling without Tony. They had no presence up front. It was Keane, Lewis Potter, Johan Wizza, and Brian Mbeumo, their front three. But neither of them are what you would say a presence, a target man, a centre forward out and out. And I think that did allow Forest to get that foothold in the game.
Well, we didn't really let them have the ball that much, because, as I say, we were pressing them so high up that they couldn't control anything. It was really not. But we must have had 6 or 7 chances in the 10 minutes after the goal, which again is quite unheard of for us in this season.
And we were sat there as well. I don't know if you were the same, looking at this, thinking Forest have got them here. We get that next goal, it could be 3-0, and it could be game over, and Forest
but
on the way to
then
victory.
Also by about 35 minutes, I was going, we're going to regret not having put those chances away.
Yeah, I had that famous, almost like commentator's curse, because I was talking to the people who I sit with and said, well, yeah, we're doing all right here, but what happens if we concede next?
Yeah.
How do we respond? And that's the concern. And lo and behold, Forest did concede next.
Well,
not without contention.
Two other things I'd like to mention before that. So first of all, before our goal, there was a point where Emmanuel Dennis broke in from the left, and from where I was, it looked like he was tripped. He had his legs taken out from under him. But the referee just basically waved play on. Yeah. And then there was another bit in that spell when we were on top of things where it looked like Ryan Yates was shoved in the back inside, on the edge of the box, which, again, the referee waved play on. It went to VAR. VAR said it was a foul outside the box. But as they said on Radio Nottingham, if it was a foul, where was our free kick?
Exactly, so, yeah. And that was a baffling decision, because on the screen it said infringement outside the box. Okay, fine. Yeah. But if it's a foul, then surely Forest get a free kick. But nothing was given. Interestingly, in his post-match interview with Radio Nottingham, Ryan Yates said that the referee said to him, actually, it was a foul, but it was outside the box. So the referee's admitted there he's made the wrong decision.
But he's had to stop the game anyway to go to VAR. So when you do the restart, what do you do with it?
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I don't understand.
And talking of not understanding, VAR came to the fore again a few minutes later with the award of Brentford's penalty. Now, talk us through this one, Baz, because I've seen the replays I don't know how many times. I've tried to see it from all perspectives, but I just do not see how this is a penalty.
No, so I mean, I think they said on the radio it was Freuler did a weird pass across. It was a wayward pass basically that shouldn't have been made. Probably his Serie A background saying pass it sideways or whatever. Wissa comes in, and from what I could see, he stumbled in front of Henderson. Henderson put his arms out, and then from where I am, I'm sort of near the halfway line. Henderson put his arms out, and Wissa fell to the ground. And then the next thing, I'm looking at them, because obviously one of the best things about judging if it's a penalty or not is you look at the players' reactions. And it looks to me like Wissa had his head in his hands like, oh my God, I've just missed a glorious chance. Yeah. So there's me thinking it could be a penalty, but it doesn't look like anyone's going to be claiming it. And yeah, like you, I've not watched any of the highlights or any goals or anything apart from this one incident, which I've watched again and again and again. And yeah, it looks to me like Wissa is stumbling and falling over. Henderson claws at the ball, and in clawing at the ball, his hand goes near. Whether it touches or not, I don't know, but his hand goes near. But Wissa is already falling over. He's lost control of the ball. It's not a shooting chance. So it shouldn't be a penalty. And I think Andre Mariner didn't think it was a penalty. He didn't immediately point to the spot. He seemed to stop, and then he seemed to walk away and then got called by VAR to check it. So I think he didn't think it was a penalty either.
Which begs the question why, if you've seen that 2 minutes earlier in real time and you've not given it, what would make you change your mind in that in the 2 minutes after and then watching the screen?
The only thing I can think of is if there was contact between Henderson and Wissa, then maybe you say, well, it must be a penalty because there's contact. But it wasn't a scoring opportunity. Wissa had already blown the chance.
Yeah. And it wasn't contact that would stop Wissa getting to the ball because, as you say, he was already
Henderson
falling.
It.
Yeah. And he was off balance and falling over. So, and it was one of those, wasn't it? It went to VAR. There was not a lot happening from out in the ground for 2 minutes or so.
And the other thing,
so you knew what was coming.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is quite important was Henderson. He was quite calm. He was like, okay, it's gone to VAR. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then as the time went on, he started walking towards the monitor and the players started holding him back. They could see him getting more and more angry. And then when the decision went, he exploded with rage because he was obviously convinced he was in the right. And then to have it called against him. And that's why he got booked for it, because he was so sure that he was going to get away with it. Well, not get away with it. He didn't have anything to get away with.
Yeah. And it just, again, it begs the question, what is this serving? It's taking the game and it's taking a moment in the game and it's putting it under the microscope, slowing it down to accentuate any little things that can happen. I mean, a touch on somebody's shin will look worse in slow motion than in real time. But in real time, you can see when there's been a contact that would foul a player or send a player off balance or affect the player's ability to make a shot in that situation or reach the ball. And I'm looking at it and thinking, well, if you're going to slow it down, you're going to make decisions look worse than what they are and moments worse than what they are. And this is what this one felt like.
The other thing, I mean, I guess we're going to come back to this later on, so maybe but it's slowing the game down, right? Every time anything happens, you hold your breath to see if you're allowed to cheer or boo or whatever, because you don't know if it's actually what's happened. There was a thing, I read something earlier in the season that there's an FA directive to keep the ball in play for longer because the ball is less in play this season than it's ever been before. And that's because of VAR, because it's stopping the game. but it's not reducing the controversy. It's there to get the decisions right, and it's increasing the controversy. So it's not even fit for purpose. And so I don't get it. I just don't get it at all. I was much happier with terrible referees in the Championship.
Yeah, but as it was, the penalty was given, and Brian and Burmo converted it, and Forest went in at the break level, one apiece, perhaps undeservedly on the balance of play, but that's the Premier League for you and VAR. So Forest had to go again in the second half, but they never really did they? They were struggling to find that kind of form and that sort of confidence that they had in the first half. The goal lifted Brentford and it deflated Forest.
This is the thing that worried me. So like I said before, there's two ways you can look at this game. You can have the pessimist hat on, or you can have your optimist hat on. And I was wearing a pessimist hat in the second half, and pretty much the entire ground was, from what I could hear, because having followed Forest for as long as I have, over the last 25, 30 years or whatever, I've seen lots and lots of Forest sides that either got relegated or flirted with relegation. And the one thing that they all have in common is they might play really, really well, but as soon as something goes against them, their heads drop and they lose their shape and they lose their ability to run. And that's what has been happening to us again and again and again this season. And you wouldn't mind it. You can kind of expect it when you get thumped 6-0 by Man City that's going to be it. But when we fall apart against Leicester, when we fall apart against Bournemouth, it felt like we were going to fall apart against Brentford today. And with that that in my mind, it was like, actually, yeah, we haven't got a spark, we haven't got belief, we haven't got the energy, the running to turn this round. And it's not the fact that we're not going to get the points we need that's going to do us in. It's going to be the fact that we've given up, that we've lost belief. And what took us up last season was belief more than anything else, that never give up sort of thing. And that's that's what happened in the second half. We just weren't there. We fell to pieces.
And it was very similar, wasn't it, to the games against Fulham and Bournemouth, which were billed a bit similarly to today's game in terms of an opportunity against a mid-table side at home to get 3 points. And it did look like it was going the same way, where Forest have a good start, they have a setback, and then they collapse. And lo and behold, in that second half, Forest were on the brink of it. They were struggling to win second balls. They were giving it back to Brentford when they did have it. And it was creating that momentum that Brentford were going to go and score a goal.
We barely got beyond our D for most of the second half. When we got the ball, the best we could do was maybe hoof it clear. But normally it would just go straight back to a Brentford player, and it was relentless like waves of attacks that we were barely keeping out.
And the goal, when it came, 75 minutes, was actually a very simple goal, and as a result, a very frustrating goal for Forest to concede. Just too easy, this one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think probably 75 minutes, yeah. So probably 25 minutes into the second half, Brentford's attacks sort of relented a little bit, and we started getting something of a grip in the game. And I think it was Gibbs-White actually who had a shot or something. Our defence were napping, and is it Mbumi? No, Wisso, wasn't it? Who came through, basically just ran through the middle and put it past Henderson. Yeah, far too easy. And it was almost like our entire team was so relieved to get into their half that we forgot that the ball might come back the other way.
Yeah. And it was, a ball over the top. It's gone between Cook and McKenna. They're on the back foot, and basically Wiss has gone through them, and he's got the pace to run onto it, and he finishes it well in the circumstances. But again, it was going that way, similar to Fulham, similar to Bournemouth, where Forest have let an opportunity slip. But actually, what the goal did, it did seem to rally Forest. You mentioned it there that they started to get a bit of a foothold back in the game before that goal. But they certainly carried it on afterwards and started to get bodies forward again. There were a few changes in terms of Awoniyi came on for Emmanuel Dennis. Jesse Lingard then came on as well for Freuler. I think it was Lewis O'Brien who was already on the pitch when the goal went in.
I think, came for Kouyaté.
Kouyaté, yeah. But I think those changes just helped Forest to get further up the pitch.
But we did get further up the pitch.
Yeah, we built more attacks as a result and got the ball into more dangerous positions. But yeah, just what the chances weren't quite happening. And, there was a cross that came in. I think it was Aurier put a ball in, fizzed it across, and Dennis was coming onto it. It just went over his head, and we just weren't quite getting there again. But Forest persevered, kept plugging away, and eventually were rewarded in the dying moments of injury time with a goal that had a bit of pinball and deflections helping it. But my word, this was again a dramatic finish, wasn't it? That's
the other thing to note is that 89th minute, Surridge came on for, I can't remember who he replaced.
Steve Cook, yeah.
Steve Cook, yeah. And that's something we should talk about later on. But I have absolutely no idea what happened for the goal because it went into the box. There was a massive scramble. I thought it had gone in, but it didn't go in. So I put my head in my hands, and then suddenly everyone around me was cheering.
Yeah. It was a ball from Lewis O'Brien towards the back post. Sam Surridge nodded it down. The Brentford keeper comes flying out, doesn't get there, drops to Gibbs-White. He has that first time shot. And I think Ben Mee's on the line, and then Jorgensen, both Brentford defenders. Jorgensen's just in front of him. The ball bounces between them, comes off Jorgensen and goes in. And Ben Mee tries to clear it off the line, but the goal line technology must have flashed for the referee. He pointed back towards the centre spot, and the goal was given. But I think it did just take replays and probably a VAR check just to confirm.
Well, that was a
VAR
check for that as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, just to confirm, because I think there was an offside check, wasn't there, in that?
Yeah, which if Ben Mee was on the line, where did that come from?
Any excuse to fine tooth comb anything Forest were doing in this game, it did seem like that. But as it was, that was the equaliser. And overall, on the balance of play, and now looking back on it a few hours later, I think it was deserved. I was a bit guilty of being pessimistic in the ground, but when you look at the overall game, I think Forest were good value for the point, and in the circumstances, we'll be happy to take it.
Yes, definitely. I think given the chances, I don't think, like, having said that Brentford forced wave after wave of attack on us in the second half, I don't think Henderson was actually that busy, not as busy as Raya was at the other end in the first half. So, yeah, I think a point is the least we deserved, but it was really, really horrible for most of the second half.
Yeah. We'll talk about some of those substitutions then. So Sam Surridge, he came on 89 minutes, probably too late, really. He should have been on the pitch sooner. And I look at Surridge and I think, well, he's helped Forest get to this position. He played a big part in the back end of the Championship season last year to score some important goals, help Forest get promoted. And he's not really had a fair crack of the whip, I don't think, since we've been promoted.
So actually, this is something that's quite important from my point of view. So where I sit, everyone was hating on Dennis. And to be fair, his first touch today was awful and he kept slipping over. So he would either receive the ball and it would bounce off him and go like 2 yards in the wrong direction, or he would receive the ball, manage the first touch, run with it, and then fall over. That's not to say he didn't do a lot of good stuff. Part of the reason we were attacking them so well is that front three had a lot of pace, and that terrified their defence. So his pace was important. But there was a lot of complaints from people around about his first touch. So when Surridge comes on, and there was a few people saying, we've made all these chances in the first half, Surridge is the one who'd put them away. We're going to regret not having him on. So Surridge coming on in the 89th minute, also prompted a lot of complaints. And for the first time this season, I've heard people around me say, Steve Cooper is getting this wrong, which, as I say, even when after Leicester, people were saying the owner's going to sack him, not I want him gone. Whereas today, people were saying he's making mistakes, he's getting things wrong, and I think that's a big change to what I've heard before.
Where do you think that's come from? Because after Cooper signed his contract, it seemed like he had the support of the Forest fans for the foreseeable, even if we get relegated.
I think I've not heard it until today, and I think it came from that sense of inevitability that we were going to fall to pieces once they scored.
Yeah, it's the same old thing happening again. Kind of. Yeah. I'd heard a few mumblings before suggesting that he was getting the team selection wrong today because he'd not started Taiwo Awoniyi. Certainly based on his performance against Liverpool, I think he's got a claim to be the main number 9 and that main player through the middle up front. Do you think that we need to see more of Taiwo as well?
I really like Awoniyi because he gives us that little bit of extra presence. But I also understand why Cooper went with that front three, because one of the things is there have been a few games where we've lacked pace, and I think the pace of those three, I mean, Gibbs-White probably isn't pacey, but the other two definitely are, and it gives us that little extra threat sort of thing in a different kind of way. But yeah, I'd like to see more of Awoniyi, and I think a lot of people were expecting him to start today.
I think the game overall was a mixed bag from Forest's point of view, because first off, I thought they came out well and put the Arsenal defeat behind them very quickly. It wasn't like Man City, where I think that carried over a bit into the Bournemouth game, 2-0 up and then collapse into a 3-2 defeat. They seemed to shake off the Arsenal defeat quite quickly, and they were out and playing with confidence and playing well. Second half, when they'd had that setback, it looked like they were going to let the game slip. They couldn't get a foothold in it. The ball was just going straight back to the opposition, and they did look a bit clueless at times in that second half, Forest. But again, it comes back to, I've said this before on the podcast, I think they're playing for the manager. And again, the way that they rallied in that last 15 minutes after going behind suggests again that the players are certainly backing the manager and they believe in what he's trying to do.
Yeah, and I mean, personally, I think not just who would we replace him with, but if we're going to get relegated, he's the best one to bring us back up. Again, I think you can look at this game with a pessimist hat on, which is, we keep falling to pieces. We keep conceding these soft goals. We keep losing our heads at the wrong moment. But if you look at it with an optimist hat on, there are signs that this team is becoming a team. They came out wearing Biancon 2 T-shirts before the game. You got Gibbs-White and Johnson showing signs that they're understanding each other. And Kouyate and Yates, when one of them went forward, the other would stay back. They're watching each other. They know what the other one's doing. So our midfield isn't left as empty as it was earlier in the season. And then we made a stoppage time equaliser, which was the hallmark of the vast majority of last season. Was we refused to be beaten. We just carried on and carried on and carried on until we got the goal. And if you want to be really optimistic, maybe this is something like Bristol City, where we just carried on and suddenly it's like, we did it. We looked awful, but we did it no matter that. And we can maybe take that forwards.
The 1865 Match Report.
Here's the lowdown on lowering bad cholesterol from Leqvio. Lowering bad cholesterol is hard, but you could do hard. You lived through 5 fad diets, 11 sleep training nights, 9 mediocre middle school recitals, 1 heart attack. And with Leqvio, you can lower your bad cholesterol and keep it low with 2 doses a year after 2 starter doses. Prescription Leqvio inclisiran is given by a doctor for people with known heart disease on a statin with diet who need more help lowering bad cholesterol. Common side effects are injection site reaction, joint pain, urinary tract infection, diarrhea, chest cold, pain in legs or arms, and shortness of breath. Results may vary. Learn more at Leqvio.com or call 1-833-537-8462. Ask your doctor about Leqvio. That's Leqvio. Lower, longer, Leqvio.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
We'll go over now to our view from the opposition. So from the Beesotted podcast, it's over to Billy.
Billy from Beesotted podcast here, and hopefully this is not too late. This is quite late here in Nottingham. I'm with my Nottingham chums and my Brentford chums. The match today, but to be quite honest with you, first half Brentford were not at the races. Nottingham Forest were all over us. We were terrible first half, and I'm not disrespecting yourselves. But what I'm saying is that we had a couple of players out, and maybe Thomas Frank put the wrong players in, whatever it may be, but we weren't on the races, and you came at us really well. You played really good football. You went ahead, and to be quite honest with you, we were delighted when we came in first half, 1-1. You know what I'm saying? You know, we got the penalty. We come in 1-1 first half. We didn't deserve it. We know that we didn't deserve it. But second half, Thomas Frank took off Jenelt. He put on Frank the Tank Onyeka, and that changed the game. And the second half, like, we dominated in midfield. You know, we did a lot of good things. You know, we scored a fantastic goal. You know, dink over and Mbumo played the ball in for Wisa, and Wisa dinked it over, you know, your goalkeeper who likes to whinge quite a lot. You know, and there we go, 2-1 up, you know, and at that stage it was kind of just like, you know, fingers in the dam. We call it fingers in the dam time, and I spoke to a lot of Forest fans. If you listen to the Brentford podcast, Pride of West London, or the Beesotted podcast, my boss friends were not happy at all with what had happened, because they felt that they should have won that game. But I'm saying to you, we've been in this position for a couple of seasons, and you just need to just pick up points. This season we would have lost this last season. 100% we would have lost this last season, and we got a draw today. And the reason why is that we've learned how to manage games. We had a number of key players out. We had Ivan Toney out. We had Gorgard, who's a massive player for us, out. We had Aya out as well. But we still managed to negotiate ourselves through that. We maybe should have got a win, because if you're 90 plus 6, right, and you're still winning, then you should win a game. But, you know, you've got the equaliser, but we still got a point out of the game. Last season, we would have lost that game last season. But I said to you, Forest first half I thought they were very good in the first half, and they should have maybe got, you know, 2 or 3 goals ahead, but they didn't put their chances away. We got the goal back in the second half. It's a second game. It was a different game altogether. So we're happy. We come away with a point, and what more can I say? You know, we've come away with another point. In this league, you have to realise it's about chiselling away and getting points and going up the league, especially if you're bottom of the league. You've got to chisel away and come away with points, and so that you can get yourself off from the lower league, bottom of the table. And that's what we did last season. We chiseled away, we got points away, and that's how it goes. So we've got a point, you've got a point. So my thing is that Forest should be happy. I can't believe that Forest fans aren't happy with the point, but you got a point. And at the end of the day, that point, at the end of the season, you may think if you've saved yourselves from relegation for 1 point, you'll think about that Brentford game and think, we got a point out of that game, which is all good. So anyway, Billy B from Beesotted podcast, which is all good. Thank you very much. And to say, I'm going to go and enjoy my curry now, because I'm very happy. Which is all good.
Thanks, Billy, and I hope you enjoyed your curry. Right, Baz, so 2-2 it finished in this game. Forest have 2 more home games to come before the World Cup break. The first is on Wednesday evening when they play Spurs in the 3rd round of the Carabao Cup. Now, I don't think that game will be high on our priorities in terms of where Forest's season ends up. So this could be a game where Steve Cooper experiments a bit and gives some game time to a few players who've been largely in reserve so far this season. On to next weekend, another home game against another mid-table side. It'll be Crystal Palace coming to the City Ground next Saturday. And it does feel a very similar game, is it, in terms of what's at stake from Forest's point of view? It feels like it's going to be a very similar kind of game. An opportunity to get 3 points. It's going to be difficult, but yeah, there's a chance there, isn't there, that we can go into the World Cup with a win under our belts.
I think the conventional wisdom is, 4 points from these two games is like what we need as a bare minimum. And if we can get a win, then that's brilliant. But I've today has changed my mind a little bit. I would have said almost I'd have taken 17th place at the start of the season. Now I will take relegation if we carry on playing to the 96th minute.
I think, you don't want to see them go out with a whimper, do you? At least they're trying. At least they're...
Yeah, the falling apart bit, that's the bit that really hurts. I don't mind being beaten, but it's the losing your heads and conceding 3 goals in 10 minutes. That's the problem. But if we carry on till the 96th minute, like we did today, then I think I'll be happy. Well, happy-ish.
Happy-ish, yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to, apart from that, anything you want to see different in the Forest approach next week? Or do you think that they can line up in a very similar way to what they did today and just hope that VAR doesn't intervene this time?
Yeah, I think again, we're starting to see the makings of this side. We're getting a more settled lineup. That midfield 3 is kind of almost nailed on. The back 4 is almost nailed on. It's just a few variations here and there as things happen. It's only the front 3 and how they work together that Steve Cooper seems to be unsure of. But if we can, and what I liked about today was the fact that we started and played higher up the pitch. And that, again, was more like last season. It was a bit more of a confident on the front foot kind of approach, which is much nicer to see.
Definitely. So as it stands, Forest are still bottom of the table with 10 points. Only 1 to go until Derby's record. So we're almost there. And if we do that before the World Cup, that's a bonus. We'll leave it there. Thank you, Baz, and thank you to Billy from the Beesotted podcast for joining us with his view from the opposition. Thank you also, listener, for joining us. We will be back with you with a report after the Spurs game, and we will, of course, be with you with a match report after the Crystal Palace match next weekend. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, goodbye.
Social Podcast Network.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more, and Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.